If your brain is anything like mine, when you're considering a career change or a shift from corporate to entrepreneurship, your brain is probably saying something like this along the lines of, I can't start all over again. Is this coming up for you? Here's what I want you to know right now is that voice in your head that's saying you can't do something because it would be starting over, that voice is lying to you. No matter what transition you're considering, you are not starting over. You are stepping into the next incredible chapter of a story that's already so rich with experience, wisdom, and value. And today I'm going to show you exactly how to recognize and even quiet that limiting voice so you can see yourself for who you truly are, which is a woman with a foundation so strong, your next move isn't a step backwards. It is truly a leap forward. Welcome to How to Quit Your Job, the podcast for moms ready to ditch the 9-to-5 and build a life and business they love. I'm your host, Jenna Reichel. Let's go. Hi, mom friends. How is it July already? We are smack dab in the middle of summer and it is hot. I know that this is both an exciting and stressful time for all moms with kids in school. So I want to give you a quick reminder that an extra dose of self-compassion goes such a long way. Please, please, please create space to actually enjoy this season, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's a trip without the kids. Maybe it's an extra day at the neighborhood pool. Maybe it's figuring out time each week to actually read that book on your nightstand. Whatever it is, make it happen and approach all of the other chaos with self-compassion. Today, we're diving deep into one of the more sneaky thought patterns that keeps successful, capable women like us stuck in jobs that no longer serve us. It's the belief that changing careers, especially moving from corporate to entrepreneurship, means starting over from scratch. And this single thought pattern creates so much overwhelm, self-doubt, and paralysis more than almost any other obstacle. And it's not always one that is obvious to us. Also, I know this one very personally, so I'll share some personal examples of how this thought kept me stuck early on in my business. It's important to know that our brains love to focus on what's new and unknown because that feels scary. It's our brain's job to keep us safe, and anything new and unknown is a threat. Our brain conveniently forgets about the decades of experience, the skills we've mastered, and the wisdom we've gained. And that creates a whole host of thoughts that really get in the way of us going for our dreams. Today, I'm going to help you see your career transition or really any big transition in your life, business, or career, not as starting over, but as leveraging everything you've built to create something even better. We're going to explore why this starting over mindset is not just wrong, but actively harmful to your progress. I'll share my own story of how this thought pattern almost sabotaged my business during maternity leave and how shifting my perspective completely transformed my experience. Most importantly, you're going to walk away with specific strategies to recognize when this limiting belief is holding you back and practical tools so that you can reframe your thinking and move forward with confidence and clarity, because that's what this podcast is all about. Okay, so let me tell you about a moment that completely shifted how I think about transitions and supposed fresh starts. My business was less than a year old when I had my first child. And as my due date approached, I found myself spiraling into anxiety about taking maternity leave. I had worked so hard to build momentum in my business. I was getting into a groove with signing new clients. I was figuring out my marketing, and I felt like I was hitting my stride as a solopreneur. So the thought of stepping away from all of that momentum felt really terrifying. My brain kept telling me the same story. It said, if you take a break now, you'll lose everything you've built. When you come back, you'll essentially be starting over. This thought created so much dread that I wasn't showing up as my best self in my business. I was making decisions from a place of scarcity and fear instead of abundance and strategy. I wasted so much time spinning in worst case scenarios that for many of my clients, I felt like I was checking out, right? I was doubting every choice, wondering if I should even take maternity leave at all. And honestly, I wasn't being present during those precious final weeks of pregnancy. And I remember scouring the internet for resources, which at the time was also such a waste of time. When I was consumed with thinking about my return after maternity leave as starting over, I felt nothing but dread. And let me tell you, dread is not an emotion that helps me be proactive, energized, and solution oriented. I'm pretty sure I even took a lot of the anxiety and dread out on the people around me, feeling like my business was doomed. I was all wrapped up in victim mentality, how unfair that women who own businesses and decide to have kids have to constantly start over, right? This was absolutely exhausting and unhelpful. And thankfully, at the time, I was working with a coach that taught very specifically the same model that I teach clients to help them very strategically manage their mind. And I remember meeting with her for 20 minutes, and that 20 minutes changed everything. I gave her my whole woe is me spiel about starting over. And she asked me so simply, what if maternity leave is the best thing that ever happened to your business? And it was at that moment that I realized I was viewing maternity leave as a complete stop when I could be viewing it as a strategic pause that would actually add value to my business, right? My coach also helped me realize that everything I had learned in the first year of my business wasn't going anywhere. I can't undo those experiences, the learnings, even the mistakes, although we'd like to, the certifications, everything I had invested time and money into for my business was a part of me before and after maternity leave. Once I was able to let go of, the dreadful thought that maternity leave was starting over, I truly started thinking more creatively about how to use that time. One of the things I did was I started collecting deposits from clients who wanted to stick around and work with me after maternity leave for after I returned. I created a simple marketing plan that I could implement if I felt up to it during maternity leave. Nothing demanding, just gentle touch points and prompts to answer. I even created some content, batch created content, set up systems that would keep my business a bit warm, while I was able to focus on my baby. And the result was not only did I end up enjoying my maternity leave without the constant anxiety about my business dying, but I actually came back as a more centered and energized CEO than when I left. And oddly enough, some of my best ideas about what to do with my business came in those lonely late night breastfeeding sessions. Distance makes the heart grow fonder, and truly distancing myself from the business for that time period allowed me to come back ready to serve at an even higher level. This experience, really taught me something crucial in that the story we tell ourselves about transitions determines our entire experience. When I was telling myself I was starting over after maternity leave, I felt overwhelmed, scared, filled with dread. When I reframed it as a strategic pause that would add value, I felt excited and empowered. Are you feeling the pull to start your own business but aren't sure even where to begin? I've created a free step-by-step workbook specifically for moms like you who want to transform their entrepreneurial dreams into reality. Okay, inside you'll discover practical exercises to uncover your unique skills, match your passions to profitable business ideas, and create an actionable 30-day plan that fits into your busy life. No more feeling stuck or overwhelmed. This workbook will help you gain clarity and confidence to take that first or next step. Okay? Head over to jenna.coach to download your free How to Start a Business When You Have No Idea What to Do workbook. And let's turn your business dreams into your new reality. I talk more about tips for entrepreneurs and a lot more about this in episode 16. So if this story resonates with you, definitely check out episode 16 as well. So let's talk about why our brains tell us this. I want us to understand, why this happens because I think it's really helpful to know what's going on in our brains. Our brains are both the problem and the solution, which is what I like to say. Our brains are designed to keep us safe. And to our primitive brain, change equals danger. So when we're considering a career transition, especially one as significant as leaving corporate for entrepreneurship, our brain focuses laser sharp on everything that will be new and unfamiliar. Maybe you've never done traditional sales and marketing, so your brain is in full panic mode. Maybe you've never had to set your own schedule, so your brain thinks you'll be less productive every day and it's freaking out. Our brain conveniently ignores the decades of experience we have in communication, problem solving, project management, relationship building, strategic thinking, and tons of other skills. It doesn't acknowledge all the things we've been successfully doing and all the ways that can positively impact our next chapter. It just focuses on what we don't know. And when clients tell me they feel like they're starting over, it's never with excitement or gratitude, right? They say it with overwhelm, with resignation, with a sense that this transition will be an uphill battle they might not be equipped to handle. And I know because that is exactly the way I felt as well. But remember, our thoughts create our feelings. When we think I'm starting over, we feel overwhelmed because our brain interprets this as losing all the progress we've made in our current successful careers. This feeling of overwhelm then drives behaviors like procrastination, perfectionism, or simply staying stuck in jobs that no longer serve us. So, complete paralysis. The reality is, though, that every experience you've had, every challenge you've overcome, every skill you've developed adds to your unique value and your unique value proposition as an entrepreneur and business owner. When you approach business and decision making from a place of confidence in your existing expertise, you set yourself up for success in the next chapter, even if it feels like your business is completely different than your corporate career. You're able to see that next chapter as less of a risk when you approach it with this mindset because you aren't starting from scratch. When you see that all the interviews you've done for promotions and role changes were you successfully selling the interviewer on you, right? So practicing sales and marketing. When you see that there were plenty of times in your life and career that you had to manage your time on your own and that you were actually pretty great at it. When you see that every conversation you had with someone at a networking event or happy hour talking about what you do was actually you stepping into marketing mode so that people knew more about you and the company, you no longer feel inadequate, right? You feel like the career change is a chance for further growth, not backtracking. I want you to think about it this way. Imagine that you've been building a beautiful, solid house for 15 or 20 years, or maybe 10 years, however long you've been in corporate. You've got strong foundations, reliable systems, rooms you've perfected over time. And now, instead of tearing down that house and starting with an empty lot, you're adding a stunning new wing that showcases everything you've learned about architecture, design, and what makes a home truly functional and beautiful. That new wing, let's call it your business or next chapter, isn't separate from everything you've built. It's the natural next evolution of your expertise and experience. So, how do we overcome this limiting belief and start seeing ourselves as tenured and valuable even when we're trying something new? Okay. First, I want you to conduct a skills inventory assessment. And I've mentioned this plenty of times on the podcast because I've had clients who come to me and know they want to start a business, but say to me, I don't even know what I'm good at. And yes, I help those folks figure out what they are good at. It's one of my favorite things to do. But I want you to know that this is something worthwhile to do now if you're struggling with getting started or overcoming any limiting beliefs like the one we're talking about today. So I'll link my free PDF, the How to Start a Business When You Have No Idea What to Do, because section 2 has a skills inventory exercise. That PDF was created as a workbook with episode 6. So you can also check out that episode for extra support. But I want you to literally write down every skill you've developed in your current role. Don't just think about your job title. Okay, think about everything you actually do. Do you manage people? Then you have some sort of leadership skills, right? Do you handle difficult clients or customers? Then you probably have some sort of conflict resolution and communication skills. If you meet deadlines and manage multiple projects, you have project management experience and probably a lot of organization skills. If you present to groups or train new employees, you have public speaking and teaching abilities. Okay, most women I work with are completely shocked by how long this list becomes, right? You've been developing valuable transferable skills for years. You just haven't been thinking about them in the context of starting your own business. This also applies not just to transitioning from corporate to entrepreneurship, but also transitioning from a stay at home mom role or house manager role to entrepreneurship or back into corporate. There are absolutely a million skills that are built in motherhood that directly relate and help you to be a great entrepreneur. I did an entire episode on it, episode 15. So if you're eager to find some of those skills, those transferable skills, check out episode 15 for some inspiration there. Okay, so after you have that list, I also want you to recognize language. So language is so important. And I want you to practice talking about the transition differently. Okay. And not just talking about it differently, but truly thinking about it differently. Shifting the sentences in your head. Instead of I'm starting over, thinking of it as I'm leveraging my foundation. Or instead of I don't know anything about running a business, try thinking I'm applying my existing skills in a new context. Or maybe even thinking I've tried new things before and everything is figure outable. My husband and I just had this mantra. Long story short, his bag fell out of our vehicle unbeknownst to us when we were leaving the airport. And he couldn't find his bag when he had gone back to the airport, a couple hours later, once we realized. And we just kept saying, everything is figure outable, right? Like we can figure this out. Yes, it is an unfortunate situation, but if everything in that bag, including his laptop and iPad and every electronics he owned, was missing, we could figure it out. Right. And that really kept us grounded through the whole process of trying to find that bag. So you want to find language that helps to shape the reality that you want. The words you use to describe your situation literally will change how you feel about it and how you show up. So figure out what language inspires you to move you forward and take action. The third thing, I want you to look for evidence of successful transitions you've already made. Okay. Your brain wants to look at this transition as a threat. I want you to be intentional about reminding your brain all the reasons why it is safe and will be okay. The evidence in your life so far and in your career that proves everything is going to work out. If you've ever changed jobs within your company, started in one role and been promoted to another, or maybe you had to learn a new software or system, maybe adapting to company reorgs. Each of these was a transition where you successfully applied existing knowledge to new situations. And I'll share a quick example of this in my own experience. After 8 years of climbing the corporate ladder, managing a sales team, I decided to apply for a leadership position in a completely different department. One focused on retention and customer service instead of bringing in new business. And my brain immediately went into overwhelm mode. I had new systems to learn, different metrics to understand, completely different team dynamics. And I remember thinking, this is going to be so hard. I'm starting over as a beginner. But what actually happened, I was pleasantly surprised by how much transferred seamlessly. Leading a team was leading a team, regardless of the department's focus. The communication skills, strategies for motivating people, systems for tracking progress, all of that came with me, right? That was knowledge that I kept. Even better, being that new person with deep sales experience actually gave me a unique advantage. I could see things from a fresh perspective. I brought over strategies that had worked brilliantly in sales and adapted them for the customer retention department. My understanding of the entire customer journey made me a more effective leader. What I thought would be starting over was actually leveling up, taking everything I had learned and applying it in a new context that made me even more valuable. And that's how I want you to think about your transition as well. It's not starting over, it's leveling up. The next thing I want you to do is really take time to consider what you're not starting from scratch. Okay. Again, your brain will want to think about all the things you're starting from scratch, but you're not starting from scratch with things like your work ethic or your communication skills. You're not starting from scratch with your ability to learn new things, solve problems, or build relationships. Okay. You're not starting from scratch with your understanding of professionalism, customer service, delivering quality work, all of those things. Okay. And if we think back to my taking maternity leave and the thought that I'd be starting over when I returned, all the credibility, the results, the marketing development that I had built up to maternity leave, that wasn't going anywhere. My email list wasn't going to start at zero. Everything that I figured out in terms of how to talk about my business and services would still be there. All the skills I developed and certifications, they weren't going anywhere. And truthfully, many of my clients weren't going anywhere either, because once I had the courage to tell them about my upcoming break, so many opted to take a 4-month break from coaching and restart once I returned. So do some brainstorming on all the ways you're not starting from scratch because your brain will absolutely want to tell you otherwise. Okay, so here's what we covered today because I want you to walk away with clear, actionable steps that you can implement immediately, as always. First, recognize that the starting over mindset is a thought error that creates overwhelm. And in my case, dread that keeps us stuck. Okay. Our brain focuses on what's new and unfamiliar while ignoring the decades of valuable experience and skills that we've accumulated. Next, understand that career transitions, whether from corporate to entrepreneurship or any other significant change, are not about starting over. Okay. They're about leveraging your existing foundation to build something new and exciting. Third thing, conduct that skills inventory to see all the valuable transferable abilities you've developed. Most women are amazed by how much they actually bring to entrepreneurship. Go to the show notes, jenna.coach/59 to get the free PDF I mentioned earlier if you want help with that exercise. Fourth, reframe your language about the transition. You're not starting over, you're starting your next chapter. So, before Friday, please take action, download the free PDF, take 15 minutes to complete section 2, write down every skill you've developed in your current career, include everything: leadership, communication, problem solving, organization skills, relationship building, everything. Okay, everything counts. Next to each skill, write how it could be valuable in a business context. I guarantee you'll be surprised by how much you actually already bring to the table. And remember, you are a woman with decades of experience, proven abilities, and wisdom. All the things. You are not starting over. You're stepping into the next incredible chapter. And that chapter isn't a step backward. It is actually a leap forward into something that can serve you and your family in ways your current career never could. Okay. And I want you to keep tuning in because next week is a conversation you won't want to miss with an expert in small business law. I know very personally how much we can stress about the legal matters that come with starting a business. And Christian Hammond talks honestly about what you actually need to be thinking about, common pitfalls, and even resources that are out there. Remember, this podcast is here to help you build momentum, get to your entrepreneurial goals one step at a time. You don't have to have it all figured out to get started. You just have to be willing to take the next step from exactly where you are right now. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of How to Quit Your Job,
a mom's guide to creating a life and business you love.
If you want to learn more about how I can help you stop making excuses and start making moves, head on over to www.jenna.coach. I'll see you next week.